This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi show number 478. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars community and conversation. I'm your host, Dan Z, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. Please follow Coffee with Kenobi on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help spread the word by tweeting that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your family and friends to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. On today's show, Chase Masterson and Carrie Goldman of the Pop Culture Hero Coalition join me to talk all about this important cause that I am really excited for you to learn much more about. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to discuss a very important coalition. There are so many things we could use to describe this. It's the Pop Culture Hero Coalition. We've got the two founders, Chase Masterson and Carrie Goldman, on the program tonight. Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, ladies.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it is.
It is great to have the both of you. So, Carrie, let's just start with you since you're closest to me geographically, since you're in Illinois as well. Talk to me about what the Pop Culture Hero Coalition is.
Okay, sure. So the Pop Culture Hero Coalition actually formed a number of years ago, back in like 2012 or 13. Chase and I had met through my daughter Katie's story and experience, where Katie had been bullied for being a female Star Wars fan. And when I wrote about it and asked for if there were any female sci-fi fans or Star Wars fans out there who wanted to, drop a line to Katie, a comment to her, Chase was one of the thousands who reached out, and I was really interested in connecting with her. And so after my book on bullying came out, I said to Chase, we should do a panel at Comic-Con. We should do a panel about bullying, because so many people who attend Comic-Cons have had this personal experience. And Chase said, let's take it a step further. Let's make a whole coalition that will, address these issues. And so it really initially started as just us doing panels at cons and panels at conventions. But over the years, it's grown into a giant and massive undertaking where we've written extensive curricula for social emotional learning, for bullying prevention. We work with, children who are across the country. And so at this point, the Pop Culture Hero Coalition it is a movement. It is a 501c3. It's a charity. It's also an educator. It's a lot of things. I think I should let Chase share what her vision is for it, because she's really been the brainchild behind growing this thing into what it is.
And yeah, Chase, what was the original impetus and inspiration for you on this?
Thank you. Well, Katie's experience with being bullied because we can't say anyone's ever bullied because of anything. People are only bullied because the other person is mean. But Katie's experience of having been a female Star Wars fan and having been the brunt of a lot of unkindness by people who didn't understand, whether they're in first grade or they're in the workplace or in relationships or, in whatever capacity all of us experience bullying, it's the same dynamic. It's all, as Carrie says, a power imbalance. And so really the impetus was in seeing that Katie is one of many, is one of all of us who've experienced this incredible pain and wanting to create a way to reach out through science fiction, through Star Wars, Star Trek, and all of the properties that we celebrate at Comic-Con trying to use those to make it a kinder world. And so when Carrie and I partnered up in 2013, we knew that there was so much work to be done, and yet I don't think either of us really could have imagined how far it would go. And today we're in a remarkable place. It's really Carrie's brainchild that this work is built out so completely thoroughly, taking us from being an anti-bullying or bullying prevention organization to one that really teaches the foundations of empathy and mental health, which is the real key. Mentally healthy people don't bully each other. Mentally healthy people support and encourage and uphold each other to be exactly who they want to be. And here we are. We're doing this work on a really vast scale.
And I think what's fun about it, because, these aren't fun topics, right? Like talking about bullying, talking about your social vulnerabilities. These things are really difficult and painful for adults and especially for children. And so we use a back door, which is the fandom. We use the love of the stories. We use the pop culture stories, and we connect with kids. So, for example, if we want to talk about, feeling anxious or insecure and how being anxious and insecure can sometimes propel us to make harmful choices, to help kids get a sense of what that might look like, we might talk about Anakin, who, was so terrified of losing Padme that it propelled him to make choices that weren't good. And so we say to kids, you're just like, the human condition. It exists in all of our favorite stories, all these heroic journeys. Characters have the same vulnerabilities as you do. And so to make it a little easier, you might have a kid who doesn't want to share the story of his or her or their own depression, or a child who might not want to talk about his or her or their own flaws, but maybe they can tap into talking about, Rey or Finn, or just a character who has had a similar experience. It gives you a metaphor, a way to access the lessons, which are the social emotional learning skills. Right? We get to access talking about the resilience. We access talking about empathy and perspective taking and all these things, but through making it like this dynamic discussion about somebody's fandom.
This is just absolutely perfect that you're both on the show, because I'm not sure how much you know about our story, but I'm an educator. I've been teaching at the high school level for 16 years, and I met my wife at our high school. She is a counselor.
Oh,
and so the
that
two
is
of us
perfect.
work together. Yes, the two of us work together frequently on these sorts of things. And I have always said that, to me, the fact that I get to teach literature is so important, because I feel like and I'm biased, but I feel like I teach empathy.
Mm-hmm.
When you read a novel, when you read a story, you have to understand things from another person's point of view. You have to walk in their shoes. That's part of the point of reading these amazing pieces of work. And then I use Star Wars as one of the tools to make that happen. I feel like these stories help us talk about themes and ideas and what we value as a culture, and how we should treat one another. And when I think about the Pop Culture Hero Coalition, that's exactly what we're talking about. So when was it specifically with your daughter that you realized, you know what, out of this bad, something good can happen? Star Wars is one of the tools, or was there another idea as well that helped you realize, hey, this is a bridge here. Pop culture is a bridge to important issues?
I realized very quickly in the days after I first wrote about what was happening with Katie and the outpouring, the response, there was just this unbelievable responsive chord that her story struck, right, with people around the country, around the world, and specifically initially Star Wars fans. So it did start out as Star Wars fans. The 501st Legion reached out to us. Star Wars fans are really a force to be reckoned with. And what I thought was interesting was, wow, at the time, my little first grader had an experience that was touching and bringing up memories for people in their 50s and 60s of what it had been like when they were teased in the lunch yard, in the play yard, 40 years ago at school. And what it does is it tells you this very unique pain, the pain of being mocked, it stays with you. It's not like 6 months later you've moved on. You may grow 6 inches, you may, meet all new people, but it might be that 16 years later, you still remember how you felt when somebody laughed at you in the lunchroom. And so I think what happened was this idea of this is such a universal feeling, this feeling of wanting to be accepted by others, wanting to like what we like, wanting to, be who we are. And basically it spread into other genres. Well, Chase, for example, brought into it many of the same lessons that are in Star Trek, all of these same concepts and lessons. And then it just, there was the Harry Potter universe, and there were just like infinite places to go with this. And so it made sense to say, okay, what are the iconic stories that children know? And how can we use these iconic stories, Star Wars being one of many, to reach out to kids? Now you use Black Panther, we use the Avengers, you use Marvel, Wonder Woman. There's really no limit, because any story that follows that heroic journey arc is going to sort of hit the boxes of dealing with mentors and allies and enemies. It's going to hit the boxes of dealing with crossing a threshold, of dealing with your challenges. And so we basically are able to take this literature concept, but then it transcends into social emotional learning and bullying prevention for our purposes. And so that's the spin that we put on it.
And you hope that the people that we're trying to reach will have their own apotheosis and find a new way, find a new path.
Right. And
you
I think
are speaking my language.
And a big part of that actually is focusing on characters who are flawed. It's looking at Killmonger in Black Panther. It's looking at the characters who have had tragic courses, because, not every kid is going to be Luke Skywalker. We need to help kids connect with and learn that you have to have empathy for Killmonger. He became who he is because of such great abandonment and loss and tragedy. So, that is something that a lot of kids can connect with. And whereas there are kids who will connect primarily with Luke or Leia, we need characters that are a wide variety of life experiences. And that's out there.
Killmonger is the I think maybe the best example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie alone is such a masterpiece, but
it is
the way to talk about racism
Yep.
And understand things from another person's point of view is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Chase, are there certain stories that you have found that you've gravitated towards besides Star Wars that you just thought this is another tool for our toolbox?
Thank you. I would echo what Carrie said about Killmonger and Black Panther, particularly with T'Challa becoming a reluctant king and having all of the doubts that he had about his ability to walk into his father's footsteps, and all of the temptations to follow in or to go back against Killmonger in violence, to meet violence with violence. And particularly Nakia's line to him, you get to decide what kind of king you want to be, is so chilling to me. And isn't that the absolute story of all of us, truly, and particularly of kids who are at the forefront of making either extremely healthy or extremely deadly choices for themselves and for other people? They could either become a drug lord or someone who leads in massive amounts of change and healing for themselves and their communities. And when you think about that, we get to make those choices every day. Some of us aren't on the forefront of we're not on the forefront of violence physically, but people make choices for psychological violence all the time. And it can happen in the smallest comments when you're watching television and somebody says, oh, she gained weight, or, oh, he looks old, or something like that. Then that's what teaches children to be critical and to bully and to be judgmental and lack empathy and to create othering. And what I love so much about what Carrie has done and what I respect so much from the very beginning of this journey is that Carrie came into this very initially that day, that night with Katie, as a concerned parent. But Carrie also, while keeping that, turned herself into an expert and did a huge amount of research and wrote a book published by HarperCollins, Bullied: What Every Parent, Teacher, and Kid Needs to Know About Ending the Cycle of Fear. And it has become a huge resource with Carrie using its work in the coalition's curriculum, which she's created along with psychologists, and also just on its own. Carrie wouldn't say this or hasn't yet, so I'll jump in and say it. It was number one on Amazon in 2 different categories recently. And so it's just wonderful to see all of the ways that this, as you mentioned, that this painful experience has turned into a grand, massive amount of healing.
Yeah.
I there's so many things that I'm curious about, but I guess I want to start with, when did you first realize that this was working? That this was, we've mentioned and we talked about how this has been growing and growing. When did you first realize we are onto something here? We are changing lives.
I think talking to people like you who have been like, oh my God, this is absolutely what we should be doing. This makes so much sense. And for me, the other way in which I know it works is that I do a ton of work in schools. Like it's very common for me to be a speaker at schools, to go in and do assemblies, trainings, staff trainings, etc. And there's a certain amount of SEL fatigue amongst kids. They feel like it's being pushed at them left and right. And, sometimes they get a little bored with it, or they just don't feel safe with it, or they have SEL fatigue. And what I see happen is that when you change the lens and you're like, well, we're actually let's talk about your absolute favorite streamers and your favorite stories and your favorite fandoms, and then use that to access the SEL. There's just an energy that you can get that you wouldn't have had without that lens. And so that really shows, oh, this works, because kids get excited about their fandoms. I mean, the fandom is the part that's where the connection is, right? The human connection. And so no one's going to share their vulnerabilities if they don't feel safe and connected to the people around them anyway. So the first step with any group of children in a class, in an advisory, in a counseling group, whatever it is, the first step has to be to create a feeling of camaraderie and trust and shared space. And after you've built that, then people will start to share their true feelings. If you don't have that sense of community, kids just won't speak. They'll just look at the instructor, the facilitator, but they won't share. So one of the easiest ways to take strangers and make them not strangers is a shared fandom, a sports team or a movie, or, whatever it is. Suddenly they're like, oh, we have this nugget of commonality, and that provides the connection to allow the social emotional learning to be successful.
It truly does break down barriers, doesn't it? I'll give you an example. One of the classes I teach is a British literature course, and they're seniors of various levels of interest / passion for reading and ability level as well. So one of the things that we've been doing is every Friday we take what we've done from the novel and we make a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And it has changed the way I teach. And I've been doing a lot of stuff with Star Wars and the Avengers and all this kind of stuff for a long time. But for some reason, doing this, where I make them sit with people they don't normally talk to from various different social backgrounds and little cliques, and they suddenly start to role play and be these characters, and they have to work together. They have to collaborate. They have to think ahead, and they laugh and they joke. And then when we go back to the classroom Monday through Thursday, they're all talking when they're supposed to talk, of course.
That's right.
And they're actually contributing to the conversation, and they're breaking things down. And I hear them, oh, I'll snap you later. I'll text you later. Like, they're creating friendships and bonds. It's,
Yep.
Mark Twain said what fiction was obliged to tell the truth, right? You're able to take really important topics and issues through pop culture and a fictional lens, break down these barriers and see, you know what, we have so much more in common than we do differently. Let's try another way.
Right. I agree. So that,
That's so beautiful.
That's how it works, right?
Mhm.
That's how it works.
It really does. It really does. So you've garnered the attention of a lot of people throughout the world, throughout fandom. Tell us, surely you've got some incredible stories. Did Chris Evans call you one day and say, "Hey, I want to be a part of this"?
I would like that.
Not yet.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I think, well, Chase is the one who has all the good context, obviously, since she's been an actress and does all that. I'm more like the intellectual property writer of the content, the research, and I work with the psychologist to develop out the lesson plans. But Chase is the one who's like brings amazing people to our panels. She's the one who is able to get the people, whatever the big draw is at a convention, and people love to share their stories. I mean, people like to share their own stories of being taunted, and teased, and there's a theme of, and it made me stronger. That is absolutely something that we hear, is that through those painful, broken places, I had traumatic growth and I was able to get stronger. And, that's an important story, but it's not uncommon on our panels to have someone, whether it's Joe Gatto or whoever it is, who shares the story of how they were shoved in a locker or bullied or made fun of, people who now have, 1 million Twitter followers and are doing great. So
let's take a quick break and we will return with more from Chase and Carrie. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Yeah, well, Carrie, you found Joe Gatto, who has been an incredible, really, truly just incredible supporter of our Be Kind campaign, which we'd love to tell you about in a minute. But
yes.
It is true that people's experience, so many experiences mirror ours. I'll just say this. I'm grateful to have done a TED Talk in which I talk about a line that particularly inspired me through an incredibly difficult period of time of my life. And it's when Obi-Wan says, "If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." And I realize every time I write that, which was earlier today for some reason, that is not just our personal power, but it's our connective power with other people who've experienced the same things, the lack of kindness and the fear. And it's our tapping into the force. And
the connections have been amazing too, right? Like in 2015, there's a boy who, for his Make-A-Wish, he had cancer, and his Make-A-Wish, he wanted to go see the filming of episode 7 in London. And so Lucasfilm, he was Katie's age at that time. She was at that point in 5th grade. Lucasfilm said, wouldn't it be more fun for him if he had another kid there? Let's have Katie and her family come, because they knew Katie's story. So we went and we became friends. Obviously, we did this amazing thing together. And the boy went into remission, Andrew. And a couple years later, very shockingly, his leukemia came back. And he was pretty down at that point. And I was able to reach out to some of my Star Wars contacts. And I said, this kid really needs your support. And a bunch of different people from Star Wars put together a private video YouTube message, including Mark Hamill, for this kid, saying, "You've got this, Andrew. We hear things are hard. You can do this." And it was never, I promised I wouldn't write about it. There was no publicity. No one got anything for it. It was simply, they all from their homes recorded messages to him of, we hear that you're having this really rough experience. And so then I sent the private link to his mom, and she played it for him in his hospital bed while he was starting his next rounds of treatments. And it was just so amazing to think about that. And he is actually in remission. He is now he's a high school senior like Katie. And we exchanged holiday cards with the family and this and that.
Wow.
But,
Amen.
It's just, that was for me, like, that was just so beautiful and this happened fast. Like, I mean, the people I reached out to, I actually reached out to, a PR person who had worked with Ashley Eckstein. And I said to her, "Hey, I've got this situation. Can you help?" And she was like, "I'm on it."
Of course she would. She's been such a great advocate for this for a very long time, as you both know very, very much.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful, you got me choked up. That's a beautiful story. I'm so glad to hear that he is on the mend. And
he's great. He's great. He's amazing. He beat cancer twice.
Beautiful. I didn't know that. That's so wonderful.
That's because, it's somebody else's, privacy. So you don't want to share someone else's story too much. But I was just amazed that people moved heaven and earth to make sure that they could get as many people as possible in this video. And they did. And
that's the kind of kindness, that's what we need. You mentioned that you've got a program that you wanted to talk about too. The Be Kind campaign.
Yes. So our Be Kind campaign features celebrities wearing a shirt that says Be Kind. And we make these shirts in-house and we sell them. And we are grateful to have had our work grow quite a bit in the last 2 years, but we're still very much a grassroots organization. Things will change soon, but I've been volunteer since 2013. We put all our money into programming, and all of the money that people spend on these Be Kind shirts goes directly into making these programs happen and getting them to people and supporting our work in Comic-Cons and in schools. And it's wonderful because it's crowdsourced empathy. It's people saying, here's $25. I believe in this message. I want to wear this message, or I want to give this message, and that will support your work. And here's my way of being a part. So all of that is at bekindmerch.org. We have a new Star Wars shirt, which says,
"Yep, I'm wearing it. If you can see it."
All right, there you go.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So we do have there's Star Trek shirts as well, obviously. But yeah, the Star Wars design says "Be Kind" with the rolling script, just like in the opening credits.
Awesome.
And I'm wearing it. I know that on a podcast no one can see, but you, Dan, can see it. And
yes, it's awesome.
And the shirts are, of every size: child's, adults, whatever.
We have masks and mugs and water bottles and tote bags and caps and all sorts of cool stuff in every style. We have Star Wars, as Carrie's wearing. We have Star Trek, Live Long and Be Kind. We have the Star Trek insignia. I have the classic Be Kind on now, which is worn by Joe Gatto and a whole bunch of other celebrities. And check that out at bekindmerch.org. That's our in-house merchandise that directly supports our work.
Mm-hmm.
So listeners of Coffee with Kenobi need to go on. I will include a link in the show notes so you can purchase a shirt of your own. We need to take a picture of ourselves wearing these shirts with the hashtag Be Kind, and let's spread the word. There's really nothing more important than this. Look, Star Wars can be divisive and challenging and wonderful and wondrous and all these things. The things we're talking about today actually matter. These things actually matter. Loving and caring for our fellow humans wherever they are at in their journeys. And as you said originally, Chase, there's never a reason that you should be or deserve to be bullied. When people are mean, that they're being mean. You don't deserve that. We need to combat that kind of thing and show that there is love, there is kindness. We can be the Avengers. We can be the Jedi. We can be a force for good.
Right. That's how we try to live our lives.
And it's fun. And that's the thing. It's
Yes.
a huge amount of fun, and doing it together with fans brings a whole new meaning into this work. We love these stories.
I've met dear friends like Chase through this work,
Mm-hmm.
Chase and Janina Scarlett, one of our psychologists, who is one of the warmest hearted people I've ever met. I would never have connected with Janina in the absence of this work.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you. Sorry, go ahead, Chase.
Dr. Janina Scarlett, she truly is amazing. A big shout out. She's at Shadow Quill online.
I love that. All right. So do you remember the story? It was a few years ago. It might have been around around the time we were talking about when things were starting to happen with your daughter. But there was a little girl, and her dad said to her, "Hey, what do you want to be for Halloween?" She said, "Well, I want to be Han Solo." And her dad said, "Well, you should be Han Solo." He's like, "Well, I'm a girl. Can I do that?" And he goes, "Yes, you should, and I'll be Princess Leia." So they took a picture together. Went viral.
I saw that.
Was on Good Morning America. And it went everywhere. And then I found them because I had the good fortune to be in a Target commercial with her. And so we all got to share our stories. And the whole purpose of the campaign was, people who celebrate their fandom in unique ways. My angle was the teacher who used Star Wars. Hers was the fact that, Star Wars is for everyone. Right? I can be a girl and I can dress up like Han Solo. And, look at her now. There are a lot of inspiring stories out there like that. Those are the things we need to be shouting and celebrating to people.
Absolutely. And especially, with gender really being recognized as more as a spectrum anyway, I think that it's even more important not to pigeonhole and label Star Wars or any fandom as being for a boy or for a girl, because those binary views of the world are a little outdated.
There's actually two projects that the coalition has done that relate to the subjects that we've been talking about for the last few minutes. One is a comic book that one of our team, Raymond Litzter, created about gender and inclusion and LGBTQIA plus kids being able to accept themselves and have their own identity in the most powerful, enthusiastic, celebratory way. And of course, why not? Unfortunately, it's mind-boggling that the depression rate of LGBTQIA kids is so high. And I think that's something that society needs to take on. And so one of the things that we've done to counteract that is to create this celebration comic book. And we've given away 9,000 copies now to LGBTQIA plus centers nationwide. It's called Lights, Camera, Identity. And it's a beautiful piece of work that we partnered with Centerlink, which is an organization that is basically the hub for LGBTQIA centers. So that's one way of us using pop culture to celebrate people's identity. And then there's another comic book, back to what Carrie was saying about reaching out to kids with cancer. Janina Scarlett, the psychologist and neuroscientist that we just mentioned, wrote a book called Super Kids. And it's actually, these two comic books are the first ever comic books to mental health comic books that are interactive. And the coalition made them and has given those away to children's hospitals. Almost 1,000 of those copies. So it's super exciting to see what else we can do with pop culture and having a sense of fun to cross these lines and just to love everybody.
And the possibilities are endless. I mean, there is, for as many stories as there are things we can take and glean from them to help us really make a difference. Speaking of making a difference, people listening to the show are undoubtedly thinking, how can I get involved? How can I help? What are some ways that our listeners can do that?
Well, one of the ways would be log on to bekindmerch.org and purchase a t-shirt, cap, tote, water bottle, masks, etc. 100% of the profits goes to our work. Another would be if you'd like to make a donation, everything is tax deductible. We became a 501c3 in 2015. So we truly would appreciate your support. We are really, for all of our great work, we are rather grassroots. We're accomplishing a lot on very little. And so we're one of those organizations where your money really does go to really directly help the cause.
And if you're a teacher, or if you are, working in a school and you're interested in learning about our curriculum, and bringing it in as something for your school, just go to our website, which is, what is it, Chase? Superheroirl.org?
Yes, we're at superhero
IRL, like in real life.org, and look at our school curriculum stuff. And some of the lesson plans, they're available. People can purchase them and bring them into their classrooms. So, feel free to go and browse the curriculum. And if you see a lesson plan or a unit or the whole curriculum and you think this is something that our school would really like, great.
Even go to the Hero's Journey, the Hero Journey curriculum inspired by Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. You've got 32 lesson plans.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you who it's made for, individually or contiguously. I mean, there are just a lot of great resources, and I can certainly promise you I will be diving into these. Carrie and Chase, thank you both so much for what you do, for coming on Coffee with Kenobi, and for sharing your stories. Definitely be sure to go and purchase one of those amazing teas or some of the merchandise and help spread the word about this invaluable resource. Carrie and Chase, thanks again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Thank you again to Carrie and Chase for joining us to discuss all about the Pop Culture Hero Coalition. I will again have links to all of the things that they talked about on today's show notes. I also want to thank MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, the place to go for your no-cost, no-obligation quote. You can help plan your magical vacation with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel and support me and Coffee with Kenobi in the process. Be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. Please join me on Monday nights on CWK Live at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. You can also go to our CWK Cafe Facebook group at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community for Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free. If you want to help out Coffee with Kenobi in a different way, then go and join the CWK Alliance at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/support. This is where you can get access to CWK Prover, the exclusive audio and video podcast not heard anywhere else. And of course, 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to help out those amazing kids and their families. You can go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. And speaking of news, I'm sure you saw that this week Disneyland After Dark was announced as far as the scheduling change. So we adjusted the podcast meetup to May 26th, which is going to be the Thursday of celebration. So you can still go to the podcast meetup on Thursday the 26th and go to Disneyland After Dark on the 27th, that Friday. Email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. You can find me on Instagram at danzercwk and also on LinkedIn. And by the way, Coffee with Kenobi is now on LinkedIn as well. We'll be on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. You can give the show a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. Please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. The reason that is so important is when you type in Star Wars, the more reviews we have, the more that you can see Coffee with Kenobi bump to the front and more people can find the podcast and join our amazing Star Wars community. If you like the logos that Corey Club has designed, be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/shop for our TeePublic store. I am available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best, be sure to go to danzmedia.com to sign up and schedule me to come and talk to your organization. Or if you want to start a podcast or blog or already have one in existence and want to expand your brand, you can also find information on that at danzmedia.com. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this holiday season. We will see you next week for more Coffee with Kenobi and Star Wars discussion. Remember, this is the podcast you're looking for. See you next time, everybody. Thanks so much.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one